Tonight, our guest is Mallory. She's a 911 professional from somewhere in America, and she was managing an emergency communications center when the unthinkable happened. The center was flooded with 911 calls of an active shooter in a very large public space. Not only did the center's team have to manage the onslaught of the initial calls, they had to remain hyper-focused on the rescuing officer's actions and coordinate the chaotic aftermath. Plus, your voicemails, and John is going to explain in a very campy way all about what he is now calling the Thanksgiving horse and carriage fire. Listen, whether you're a 911 dispatcher, someone who responds to these calls in the field, or a civilian who wants to peek behind a very heroic curtain, this is an episode for you. All that and what it means for your weekend tonight on the Comm Center.
City council members have announced their plan to disband the Minneapolis Police Department.
We're calling for defunding the police.
Shootings in New York City have more than doubled this year.
Wake up, America, and welcome to the Comm Center with Drew Breezy. This is where we tell 911 tales and talk cop response. I'm John. I'm an active 911 dispatcher in the field. I've been doing this for about 8 years. I was a correctional officer before that. Joining me as our host tonight, as always, is Lieutenant Andrew Baxter, also known as Drew Breezy, also known by his Instagram handle, What Say Drew. We have Drew Breezy here tonight. He's a 29-plus year veteran of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in Florida, finishing on his last day with the rank of Detective 1. Drew, it seems like it's been forever, but how are you, man?
Oh, man, I couldn't be better. Just getting used to things, just kind of feeling, how do I put this? Just wading in the waters and trying to get used to the temperature and feeling great, feeling fine about it. So, that's kind of it. I mean, I'm doing well, and I hope you are too, and I hope everybody else that's in the chats who I see a bunch of people here. Listen, we're live on Facebook. We're live on the YouTube channel known as the Comm Center. We're live on Rumble on a channel that's known as the Comm Center. Rumble's very fickle when it comes to their setup. They have like a main account and then a channel. They're a lot different than YouTube. A little bit more free though. I mean, you can speak your piece or speak your mind there without hesitation or worry. If you want to get a hold of us tonight, you can do so by calling 848-266-6911. That's 848-COMM 911, COMM 911. That's done intentionally. And we're going to bring Mallory out in a minute. She's our guest tonight, and John is sacrificing because right now his beloved Cowboys are playing, I think, Seattle.
Yeah.
And we'll both, I mean, my Lightning are playing right now as well. So
no one knows what that team is, Drew. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was wonderful. It was filled with all the trimmings. And as they say, we had a nice and hearty Florida sleigh ride, and Uncle Steven did the carving with an electric knife this year, and by carving I mean most of his hand is now no longer with us. But
oh my gosh,
it's all right.
Do we have the 911 audio from that?
We do not. We salvaged most of the gravy, so it's okay. There were two boats.
What are the Baxter family traditions for Thanksgiving, other than like trying to avoid losing some digits in the turkey? Like, what do you guys normally do every year?
Well, it's like a decathlon. I mean, it involves skeet shooting and there's some archery. But we're waning. I mean, the Baxters are winning. There's only 3 of us left, and 2 of them are in Western New York, nowhere near here. Which is, I'm in Florida, and so I spend most of my time with my wife's family. This is a weird Thanksgiving for my wife's family because this is the first year without their patriarch. We just lost Grandmare a couple of weeks ago. She was a wonderful human being. Man, I wish I had some pictures handy of Grandmare. She roamed the plains for 91 or 92 years, but she was just she was a hoot, and she had a story for everything, and I was kind of her favorite target because everybody else had already heard all the stories, and I was kind of the rookie to the family. So, I got to hear all the grandmere stories before she passed away.
That's very sweet. My grandparents passed away when I was a lot younger, and it was never the same without them. They're kind of the ones who carry on those traditions, and I'm trying to find new traditions for my own family, and it's harder because now I'm kind of the one that has to do that. So far, all I have is also not cutting off all of my fingers. That's been a daily tradition for me my entire life. But we always watch Trains, Planes, and Automobiles because it's like, of all Thanksgiving movies, that's probably the best one. And every year I still laugh at it. I don't know why. And we also watched Die Hard for some reason, and we evaluated as a family whether or not it was a Christmas movie. And I was not in the majority in that one. Most folks around here know that I hold it to just be a simple action film. But I'm glad you had a good Thanksgiving. I missed you while you were gone. I thought about you every day. I bet you could actually believe that. But I don't want to keep our guests. I don't want to keep our guests waiting too much longer. Everyone's heard plenty from me today, that's for sure. So why don't we welcome our guest, Mallory? We'll bring her on the screen here. Mallory, welcome.
Hi.
Say hello to everyone, Mallory. Mallory, say hello to everyone. So what we're going to do, and I don't want to I'm going to turn the floor over to her, obviously, but there's some questions that I have. I told you in the intro that she was managing a floor during an active shooter scenario. It's been a lingering problem with me when I was running a communication center. That was one of my first questions when I got up there. What are we going to do during an active shooter? And everyone just kind of looked at each other. It's not that they hadn't thought of it for the first time, but they're not necessarily included in the law enforcement training of an active shooter. And I found that to be a little bit alarming because just knowing what I know, we were on the heels of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas at the time, and Columbine, all these other, all these other active shooter incidents that we had. The communication center gets flooded quickly. In fact, you're the first to be flooded. We saw that in Uvalde, and there are issues with connectivity, especially with the radios when you get inside a hurricane-proof school. Before I left that position, before I was made to leave that position, I guess we'll say, but I'm not bitter. I was in the process of having the managers, the 4 managers, work on 4 different aspects of an actual order or some type of operating procedure for active shooter. I don't know what the status of it is now, because what you all have to think about is, out there in America, you're going to be flooded with 911 calls. And so there's that response that you have to manage. You're going to be flooded on the radio with people wondering where to go and what to do. And you have to, connect them with the proper medical people. You're going to have to do the coordination with the medical people. And then, the sleeper is you're going to have to answer the phone call of the cop that's like, where's everybody going? Or the major who's like, I need this information right now. So tell me about, can you run this tag for me? So these are the kinds of things that I want to get out of Mallory. And of course, I'm doing all the talking right now. We'll let her do that. Mallory, how long have you been in the business?
14 years.
Wow. 14-year survivor. And you're currently, I'm guessing, like a supervisor of some sort, of manager? Or...
I'm a specialist in charge, which I'm not a supervisor, but if they're not there, then I'm in charge of the floor. So yes, but no.
Been there, done that.
Kind of like what a corporal is, right? Wouldn't that be essentially that? Yeah.
I have all the responsibility, but none of the authority.
None of the power, right? That's how they try to trick you to go out to the next level, right?
That's pretty common in the field, I think. So tell us, walk us through just a little bit. We're going to try to remain generic. It's going to be next to impossible to remain completely generic. I'm not going to mention what agency she works for because she's on here representing herself. She's doing us a solid by coming on here. And again, our intentions are to share the knowledge that she has because it's not necessarily widely shared in the business. So we don't want to get her in trouble with her agency by any stretch of the imagination, and we're not expecting her to disparage anyone. Actually, why don't we start with this?
A gunman killed 8 people at a mall last week. The chaos captured in newly released 911 calls that also show how dispatchers help save lives. Morgan Chesky has the late details, and we do want to warn you, some of you viewers may find the audio disturbing.
Seconds after a gunman opened fire, a terrifying flood of calls for help.
Are you? Mom just got shot. Okay, where at? Mom's collapsed.
Alan 911, are you calling about the shooting?
About 20 of us hiding in the bathroom in Fatburger.
As hundreds hid wherever they could, police say Mauricio Garcia opened fire almost immediately after he pulled up on a busy Saturday. The 33-year-old, armed with a rifle, handgun, and wearing body armor, began shooting near the mall's H&M store.
Can you please press something on her to stop the bleeding? We do.
Before an Allen police officer shot and killed a gunman, those calling 911 given tragically familiar advice.
I need you to stay where you're at and lock yourself in place. Keep your head down. Do you understand? Okay.
When it was over, the gunman's shooting spree took 8 lives and wounded 10 others. Today, multiple groups demanded investigators examine the potential for a racially motivated hate crime.
I urge you to take action. Stand against hate and discrimination. We must rally our elected officials to call this a hate crime, which has not happened yet.
As the community fights its way forward, a somber moment Sunday when hundreds stood silent, remembering those no longer here from a tragedy we've seen before. And tonight, investigators say this scene has been cleared for days now, but there is still no timeline on when the shops will be reopening. And as for this memorial for the victims, officials tell me it'll be coming down tomorrow to be shared with the families who lost loved ones.
Okay, so just to be clear, she's, this occurred in Allen, Texas. That's not necessarily the agency she works for. Understand that when, for those that are in the 911 business, they understand this. Maybe a lot of cops or firefighters don't even understand this, or civilians, but all of these calls are going to flood out to all of the area agencies because it's just such an onslaught. Just imagine, if there's only 6 people answering 911 calls, 250 calls come in at the same time. They carry out, or they flood over to different areas, and every agency in the area is going to be equally as busy. I can guarantee that, just because of it's all hands on deck. Everybody's going to respond, and it's the kind of stuff we saw at Michigan State. So if we want to tackle something first, Mallory, why don't we talk a little bit about managing the 911 response and gathering the info? What was the tone like in there?
It was actually, for my agency, was pretty somber anyway, because we had another event going on that day. We had one of our captains in the fire department, his funeral was actually going on during this. So we had a lot of our resources there, which was actually like less than a mile away from where the shooting occurred. And so we were kind of distracted by that and trying to watch that and participate while we were on duty. And then all of this happened. What
was it? I mean, was it, when there's an accident on the interstate, and I was sitting up in a communication center, when there's an accident on the interstate, I know that there's a pretty bad accident somewhere, just judging by the volume of calls. Was it pretty apparent pretty quickly that something big was going on?
Our first couple of calls came in, and it just sounded like what we would call like gunshots in the area, where they just heard the gunshots. They didn't actually see anything. And then I would say less than 5 minutes after, it was the flood of calls from the actual outlet mall, people like sheltering in place, or even the victims calling. And it was, I can't even describe how many calls. Like, we got 400 calls in less than probably 45 minutes.
Unbelievable.
And that was just our agency. I know all of the other agencies around got the leftover calls that we couldn't answer.
You must have been calling them back for a long time too. If you just have abandoned 911 calls, you can't answer them all, right? So then your call queue just shows you have a whole bunch of missed calls. You're legally and morally bound to call all those people back and make sure they're all right. Some of whom aren't going to answer, so it's like you can't resolve that.
Right.
If my math is correct, that's a call every 6 seconds or so.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't have the personnel who are in the right frame of mind, one, but two, if you don't have the personnel to handle that, it's going to be overwhelming. And in that 450 is maybe a missing piece of the puzzle. Was there ever any concern, or was there a procedure kind of thrown out, like, hey, like just find out what they're doing and hang up? Or
We kind of made the determination that if they were at one of the stores and sheltered in place, we obviously kept them there, made sure no one was injured, and then tried to get any information if they saw the suspect, but a lot of them didn't. And then whenever we got the victims, we were giving medical instructions while we were trying to get Alan on the phone, because obviously they're getting way more bombarded with calls than we are. So we're trying to get them through so they know where more victims are. It was chaos.
I think these are the things that, right after I retired, Uvalde occurred, and I still have very strong opinions that counter many people. Like, I understand that it was an emotional event, and it's horrible that 18 kids and 2 teachers were murdered senselessly. I also understand the cops' point of view, and of course the communications people point of view, because you just don't understand what the amount of information that you're getting, and it's not rehearsed. It's rarely trained. Had you had any training before this on active shooters or anything like that?
We actually did with my agency. We have our active attack training, which is mostly based off of like school shootings. And then I had actually gone down to Uvalde afterwards to help with run the like the outside agencies coming in, their command center. So I had gone to Uvalde and kind of talked to the ones there and experienced that too.
Amazing.
We have a question from the audience from Carly. She was actually a 911 dispatcher out in the Bay Area. She's curious how many dispatchers and call takers were working, and if the person who's running the radio is also taking calls.
That day we actually had 4 regular dispatchers and then me as the specialist in charge. And then I had a new call taker actually starting that day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I was working a channel. I was working the event, the funeral, and then we have 3 other channels. So regular fire, what we call our like information channel, and then patrol. And so I tried to keep patrol off the phones because she was still working regular stuff with our officers. But then once they started going, we ended up closing that channel too, so that she could solely work that. And she pretty much stayed off the phone.
Wow.
It's impossible to really juggle that. You can't. I've had to do it before, but having to be on the phone and the radio is it's very difficult, particularly with some technology. If you're wearing a headset, it only will play one in your ear, so you're having to listen to speakers with your other ear, and you're going to miss critical stuff that the field units are telling you, police officers. And so
that's why I told her, because I was in charge. I was like, don't worry about answering it. Like, we obviously will have to call him back, but like, we're gonna try and pick up where she can answer, because she needed to focus on who all was going and how many were going and where they were going.
Yeah, which is a huge task in and of itself. You're now, when you're taking on a big incident like that, you're now the information management for your incident commander. You need to know where certain resources are staged, how many resources are there. You're looking at mass casualties. Do you need ambulances from other jurisdictions? You need fire. And also, you've got to stage these things. And sometimes you just have to make those decisions yourself. You can't send these first responders into an area where there's active gunfire, right? We don't do that. There's some paramedic units, some firefighter units that have ballistic vests and things like that, but it's still something you would want to avoid. And all of a sudden, you're in command of the communications room, and you're a de facto commander until we have an incident commander there. I think so few people give credit to 911 dispatchers and dispatch supervisors that until we have someone on the scene, the only one who even has a hand on this wheel of this crash is you.
Well, speaking of which, you've got to manage the chaos and the coordination of everybody and their mother calling to see what's going on, including all the cops in your agency, probably the media, and then probably your command staff. So what was the coordination like between the agencies, and then, just getting the word out to your chain of command?
Initially, whenever all of the calls were coming in, we couldn't even get like a non-emergency line out to call anybody. So we couldn't get in touch with Alan. And so I ended up having to text one of the girls that I knew worked there to see if she could give me any information. And she actually wasn't there initially for the first few minutes. She was on her way in. So afterwards, whenever they were still getting bombarded with calls and we were too, we ended up usually like just texting back and forth with any updates that they had or where we needed to send our people to go to meet them.
Drew, a question from a chatter here. I think they have general questions here about how incident command works. I don't know how deep you want to go into that, but who would be the incident commander in that situation? Would they call in a supervisor?
The first person on the scene is going to be the incident commander, and then it'll start bumping up, as the supervisory people respond. So this is one of the criticisms that people have of Uvalde, that I still side with the officers that were there. There's a lot of confusion going on to begin with, but what everyone keeps calling the police chief that was there, Arredondo, he was the police chief of 6 officers, by the way. So he was inside, and it is very, very possible for him to not know that he is actually the incident commander, because your responsibility is, when you're the first person there, you start coordinating, start taking command. Then there's supposed to be, in the incident command system, somebody on the outside that sets up a command post that is not engaged in the fight. And clearly, if he's trying doors and he's on the phone with communications and he's engaged in the fight. So I'm not making excuses for this guy. I'm saying that it's always worth a deeper look. But when you're talking about incident command, and it was a great question, Christy, just think about it. If you're the only one there, you're the commander until somebody else can get there of higher rank, and then their decision making kind of takes over from there, and it just keeps going up and up and up until eventually. And hopefully more and more agencies are training Asher response. The head of the fire department, whoever that is going to be, and the head of whatever law enforcement agency is going to be, they're going to meet under a tree somewhere very close. Hopefully both have communication with everybody that they're responsible for. And that's kind of where the command post is formed from there. So eventually, the head of that agency will show up and take command, and the head of the fire department will show up and, jointly work it. But if it's a law enforcement response, it's going to be a law enforcement officer until the scene is safe. When the scene is safe and it turns into rescue and recovery, the command is going to be turned over to the rescue and recovery people, to the firefighters, basically.
But until somebody gets there, the only thing you can do is influence the situation through phone communication with people who are reporting to you, giving advice, and as the units are responding, telling them where they should go to. And an outlet mall is going to be a headache, trying to give people directions as to where exactly this is happening. The video said this was, starting at the H&M store. If someone doesn't go to the mall, how are you trying to translate that to them? And even then, by agency, it's different. Like I would use, south side of the building, whereas some dispatch agencies are going to use essentially the way firefighters talk about sides of a building, number one being the street front. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, that's actually one of the main aspects of incident command. It's like stripping all terminology, so you speak in plain English. But people forget that because it's what we've been doing for years and years and years. But Mallory said something that I think is very poignant, and this is how I've always felt about people that work in communications, about John even sometimes. But she said, look, I couldn't even get a phone line out, so I picked up my phone and I texted my friend who worked at the neighboring agency. This is the resourcefulness that we're talking about. Like they're not always given the proper equipment, they're not always given the proper respect, and that's a different conversation, but they always know how to get it done in the heat of the moment somehow. And she just started texting, and that always gets overlooked. You know, that for some reason that just kind of it maybe not intentionally slips through the cracks. It's a no-brainer for Mallory to say, well, I mean, I have you know, we were texting memes, you know, 5 minutes before that. So
Yeah.
but the resourcefulness of the dispatcher is something that I think the general public doesn't really understand.
We're routinely asked to do things that we don't know how to do, and we don't have time to like really hem and haw about it. We've got to figure it out. I think probably my greatest example was we had a guy, a barricaded subject who had a gun to his head. I needed to get a recording of his wife telling him to cooperate and put down the gun, and I needed to get a recording of her voice into a deputy's phone. And sure enough, I was using my personal computer and my own cell phone to get that to them because I had no idea how to do it in that moment. But Mallory gets it done. That's how dispatchers are built.
That's right. So from here, do we lose Mallory?
No, I'm still here.
No, she's still here.
All right.
Just quiet.
Do we have a second clip, Drew?
We do. That's exactly what I was going to segue into. So we talked a little bit about managing the 911 part. We talked a little bit about getting the word out to the command structure. Let's see what the radio people actually had to deal with.
Okay, you understand? Okay. Okay.
I do understand the volume's a little bit low. I apologize for that, but there's not a whole lot we can do.
All right, you be good.
Just a routine conversation between some kids and their mom, and all of a sudden gunshots.
45. I think we got shots fired at the outlet mall. I got people running. Get going, get moving! 420 on the ground. They're moving further away from me. Go, keep moving! Get out of here!
So he ran towards the sound of the gunshots, and the gunshots stopped. So he kind of slowed down.
I'm polo rifle arm moving, trying to get to him. They're still shooting. I'm on foot. I need everybody I got. What? Yes. What you got? Are we a mass shooter? Yeah, we got people coming. .145, I believe we got a mass shooter. I got a magazine on the ground. Drop it! Drop it! I'm partially injured. I'm moving as fast as I can, trying to get over there. I'm by Tommy Hilfiger. I don't know where he's at. Shots are stopped. Actually still going.
Well, this is traffic, dispatch.
That's actually him shooting.
Shots fired by police. I got him down. Drop the gun! Hey, get off the air. I'm over here by Liz. I got him down. Get away from here! Get away from here! Get away! I'm by Sunflower's Hut. I'm moving up on him. Who's just behind me? Watch your fire. Watch your fire! I got him down! I think so! I'm not hearing any...
Okay. There was a lot of criticism of that guy, believe it or not. I mean, like, look at what he did. All right. And you know, still 6 people lost their lives, I think. There's a lot of criticism of the being out of breath, and, you know, cops are...
I think we know that may not have been what it was, though. His adrenaline is pumping. He's combat
anybody
breathing.
is going to be like that. I mean, you know, non-cops need to understand that he's carrying an extra 30 or 40 pounds, you know, in the form of a gun belt, a vest. Like, you try and do that, and be precise with your shots, because you're responsible for every bullet that comes out of your gun. Then the cops are like, oh, this is why you need to be in shape and blah, blah. Yeah, I get it. I mean, I understand why everybody's going to be in shape. You can be as svelte as John himself, and you're not, you're going to be out of breath. It's just the way it goes. It is the combat part of it.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking to a mom and her 2 kids, telling them to wear your safety. And next thing you know, you're pulling out the rifle out of your car, your long gun, and you're running after somebody who's murdering people.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not what your brain is used to. So
I can't imagine what's going on in dispatch, not to interrupt you, Drew, but at one point he's trying to talk, and dispatchers are trying to get help there, and you're sharing the same resource, right? On a digital radio, you can't go at the same time. The talk group closes, and that chirp indicates that you have the air. So he's trying to get out, and he can't. And he at one point he's saying, you know, get off the air. He's got things to talk about. That's one of the hardest parts as a dispatcher, where you're trying to manage that flow of communications, because you need everything that he's saying, but you have so much to tell everyone else.
So, Mallory, had you seen that? I'm assuming you have it. I don't know for a fact. Had you seen that?
Yeah, several times.
Oh, okay. And I'm assuming the officer is doing okay. I mean,
As far as I know initially afterwards he didn't want any public anything. He was just doing his job, and
yeah,
as
he
far
went out
as
and
I
did
know,
his job.
yeah, 1,000%. But
That's I mean, like, I don't even know how to describe that kind of heroism. I mean, that's insane. That's intense. So perhaps maybe not where, you know, they're trying to manage the chaos on the radio where he worked. I'm sure there was an equal amount of radio traffic where you worked, because I could hear sirens coming from all over the place, from all 4 directions. So
yeah.
what was it like trying to manage the radio part for where you worked?
Initially, it was probably about maybe 20 minutes into the incident, from whenever Alan started getting calls about shots fired, that they actually got a hold of us to ask us for assistance. We hadn't sent anybody to them. We had just broadcasted out basically on our radio that we were getting calls about an active shooter at the outlet mall. And so all of our guys pretty much started heading towards that area, even though we weren't authorized to go by the watch commander yet. And then once we got the call of them saying, yeah, we need whoever you can send, they all went.
Yeah, it's a matter of like, there's probably a memorandum of understanding between the agencies, and until the formal request is made, sometimes it's, you know, like, as much as the cops on the street just want to go over there and help, they probably were already doing that or whatever, but I'm sure that there has to be some kind of formal request. So And it sounds like that was obviously made.
Yes.
But you know what? There's no real memorandum of understanding when those 911 calls start bleeding into your communication center, and you got to manage all that chaos too. So
Yeah.
so did what was your takeaway from the radio response? Like, were there people unnecessarily talking, or were there people that just didn't? I don't know how your radio's set up. I don't know if you have like 3 or 4 different channels, or I mean, did it
Once
seem
sorry.
good? No, go ahead.
Once Alan asked us for help, we closed that primary patrol channel and sent them. And then we had fire units en route too, obviously with as many ambulances as we could send. Um, and so they were en route on their own channel too. So we had 2 separate channels essentially working for this, plus our regular 3 that we normally have.
So you're primary. Are you a primary PSAP? In other words, do you get
Yes.
all of the calls for your area, or do you handle just like police and fire and medical for your jurisdiction?
We handle it for our jurisdiction, but we also have like the county portions that we cover for fire and medical, so we handle portions of that too.
Sorry, I was distracted.
No, that's okay. It's dispatch agencies are all set up very differently, and if she's responding and she's helping a neighboring agency, you bring up a good point about having to have that request being made. There is going to be court cases after this, and understanding how things went down, and there's actually going to be like bills to pay and things like that, and that's why formal requests have to be made. But there also are different types of dispatch agencies where they just handle stuff for the city and not anything in the county. I think that's what you were getting at.
Like, you kind of hope too that federal emergency management steps in and reimburses, but you never know what they're going to reimburse and what they're not, and maybe they won't at all. But again, you can't just ask for money just because you showed up. It's more of a, were you asked to be there? It's just stupid red tape. So it's governmental stuff.
Yep.
So coordinating the rescue part might be a little bit different for you. It might look a little bit different for you because you're used to talking to the police and the fire and the medical. Was it any different on this day? Trying to get them to go or communicate with one another do they communicate with one another on a daily basis? I guess would be where we should start.
Agency to agency they don't, but like our firefighters are medical too, so they know what's going on, and then whenever they get on scene, they coordinate with our police officers. So our agency is pretty well versed in working with all 3 of them, but not so much with other agencies unless they just request us to come, which doesn't happen very often.
Something that occurred after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas down here in South Florida, there was a large commission that was put together, and they came up with a lot of findings, but also they created a statute based off of, there are some mandatory things that each communication center had to do. One of which was we have to have an open and manned channel for all agencies in the state to be able to get on and talk to one another. This was born out of some like jurisdictional disputes. If you don't know the setup of where Marjorie Stoneman Douglas is, it's like in the city proper, but it's just on the border of the county. And then of course you throw in another city that's right pretty close. And this city fire department doesn't talk to that county fire department because they're in a beef with one another. And, so to resolve that, there's just a common channel. What's that?
That's real. I mean, I've had to work before where certain agencies, they're not offering up help and things like that, and the other agency's not asking, and they don't necessarily want to share resources. But after 9/11, I know that changed the way a lot of it worked. I know, like Minnesota is an example. They have Armor, which is it's a radio channel that like anyone's allowed to use. Like the way that it was built with tax money and infrastructure, it was all set out from get-go that it was a channel that everyone uses for law enforcement and information across the state, but it doesn't belong to any one person. So jurisdictions vary like that, but you'll have radios set up that way.
Do you have anything like that where you are, Mallory? Is there a common channel that all the agencies in the area can kind of talk to? Use?
Yeah, we have like an interrupt channel. We have several throughout the state that we can use, and usually we have certain ones that we're assigned that we can use anytime if they're not being used. But then we also have the capabilities to patch channels. We just
Sure.
didn't
Oh, yeah.
in this incident.
So there was no patching of it probably wasn't necessary at that point. Like they probably had everybody in a command post, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patching is actually not that good in my opinion, because
Yeah, it's
if you
not.
take two digital channels or a digital and analog, they're not communicating perfectly. So you'll have one talk group that's opening and it's also transmitting on another talk group that might be closed. But of course, because it's an automatic function, it doesn't know that's happening. And it's very easy to have your communications jammed or not working. I know sort of the premise of this episode of the stuff that we're talking about is that communications is the first thing to break down in a major incident. It's not necessarily dispatchers that are breaking down, but
No.
technology has certain limitations, and training has certain limitations, and sometimes you can even have the best training in the world, and when you have something like this going on and you're trying to figure out the best way to do it, a field unit's going to have a different idea of how it should be done compared to the dispatcher. And so you'll tell someone, hey, we're all going to go over to this channel, and this is going to be our reserve channel that we're going to use for this. And someone else, some field unit has already switched to a completely different channel and wants everyone over there. And then, like I said, sometimes you're trying to bridge a channel that another agency is on so that they can hear what's going on. It just gets really frustrating really quickly. And you generally leave that incident feeling like, well, we're going to have a meeting about this one. It's we're gonna have to find some way to do this differently. And sure enough, the next time it comes up, like no one remembers. So
Well, yeah, the next time it comes up, it's completely different anyway.
right.
But what I think what the general public doesn't understand, and probably again some of the cops or the first what we call first responders. So you only have so many 911 lines that are going to go into your agency.
Those are physical phone lines, by the way, folks. It's not even if it's internet based. It's not completely open ended. You can't just receive 100 911 calls at once. You can receive 6 or 10 or however it's physically set up.
Think of an airport parking garage. Okay, so you get on the second floor and you start driving around, and there's no spaces. There's no spaces. So what do? You got to go up to the third floor, and you start driving around, looking around on the third floor. Maybe you find a space up there. But if there's 500 cars behind you, they're going to not just fill into the third, fourth, and fifth floors. They're going to keep coming to the second floor, and they're going to keep coming to the third floor and to the fourth floor. So it's true the same with, especially with cellular technology. It's going to bounce to the, it's like a predetermined thing. Like
it's rerouting. Yeah, they'll have an emergency backup PSAP that's the first one to take it. It'll ring a certain number of times and then it'll bounce. And then usually there's a PSAP of last resort where, like, if you have a statewide emergency, eventually everything goes to one, what they would call major or fallback PSAP. But in this case, where she's taking 400 calls, these calls might be being dropped or just not going through it all. And it's got to be heartbreaking and heart-wrenching as a dispatcher doing your best to keep up. And you're thinking, especially when you're calling all those missed calls back, like, did I miss a call back from someone who was in the last moments of their life? Did I miss a 911 call from someone who just had a message to pass on for a loved one? And your mind kind of, I imagine, would go through that sort of thing and worrying about what you potentially missed out on. The other thing is just taking the calls. And Mallory, correct me if I'm wrong, or let me know if I'm on the right track, but you'll get a 911 call and you have no way to quickly triage whether or not this is a worthwhile call in terms of information, right? Someone will call 911 and they'll be at the Taco Bell across the street saying, I hear a noise at the mall. Well, that's good. You already had a police officer there who already told you there were shots fired, so that call's no good. And now we have another 911 call, and it's coming from inside the H&M store. But that person's inside the dressing room and they're just scared. And as scary as that is, you can't get any meaningful information from them. How many suspects are there? What kind of weapons do they have? You can't get any information like that. So you have to process these calls very quickly, and you'll never know if you're passing on a potentially good call in terms of a fountain of information and taking just to keep it going to take the next call only to get someone who knows nothing. Mallory, does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that's completely accurate.
Right. Okay, so while we're on the subject, there's some mental aspects of keeping everybody focused and kind of managing the personnel that day, especially when things kind of, calm down a little bit. Not to mention, John just mentioned it, like you're calling people back. You're bound to hear somebody say, yeah, I was standing 2 feet from the guy, but nobody answered.
Right.
Um,
And how that makes you look as an agency, even though you have no way of dealing with
you
that
have
at
no way
all.
of knowing. You have no way of doing it, and people don't understand the flood of the call. So, how do you keep? How did you keep the team kind of mentally focused, or was there anything special you had to do like before or when things kind of settled down? Did you have to call in another shift, or were there people that were, understandably, with a 1,000-mile stare or 1,000-yard stare? What kind of stuff did you have to do?
Honestly, it was about an hour and a half to 2 hours before our shift change anyway. So luckily, that shift supervisor, she heard what was going on and started coming in early. So she had taken it upon herself to start texting her shift to try and get them to come in early. So we could at least have more cross-trained dispatchers and not just like we had several one or two channel trained people that are helpful, but in a situation where you might need to take over another patrol channel or something like that, it's not helpful.
Or or
S
or your or your brand new person who might be getting
Yeah.
overwhelmed, and you probably need someone
Yes.
to just sit right beside them and remind them of their training and just help them kind of get through that for
Is
sure.
your
Yeah.
is your brand new person still with you?
She actually is, very strong person for this, and
Yeah.
that was, like, my first thing was to check in with her, and I checked in with everybody, just as a person that was in charge, but also as a human being, because I know all the calls that they took. Just made sure that they were good before they tried to leave, or if they needed somewhere to sit or something before they tried to go home or anything like that. But she struggled with it for a little bit, and then we had a couple of conversations, had several debriefings actually that we got to participate in with the officers that responded, which
That's
was really
amazing.
helpful.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's not at all common, by the way.
No.
I've
No,
only
it's
been
not.
invited to one debriefing in 8 years, and it's not that we have critical or terrible situations happen a lot where I am, just because I'm kind of a rural dispatcher and I work for a small agency, but it's not at all common. In fact, when we were sending out advertisements for this episode, a couple police officers reached out to me, and they were talking about how Joshua in particular reached out to me in the DMs and said, we never get to do these interdisciplinary debriefs afterwards. And it's so important to do that, to see that we're all on the same team, to understand the struggles that we have. Certainly we try to understand the struggles that firefighters, that paramedics and police officers are dealing with. We often just get to be the recipient of their frustration over the radio. Sometimes they're the recipient of ours. But when you have the debrief, it's almost like, sorry that things got heated there, but we're all on the same team. And obviously I was just frustrated by the situation and it wasn't you. These things can go a long way towards not only just repairing strained emotions between agencies or persons, but they do a lot for building that morale going forward, that dispatchers are important. They matter as much to the response as much as the police, the firefighters, the paramedics, and everyone else that goes. The other thing that it's interesting, and I would like to ask you about, particularly now that this has happened at a nearby agency or in your area, it seems like everyone has the mentality that active shooters are like winning the Nobel Prize. They exist, but they're not going to happen to me. They're out there happening. You see them in the news, but it's never going to happen here. My viewpoint on it is that this is a sad world, and all of us are sort of in a situation where we're sitting on a time bomb, right? Where eventually it's going to go off, where we're going to have an event, whether it's an active shooter or something else that overwhelms us as an agency. Are you guys doing training in your area for active shooter response? And if so, are you guys being included in that? Because a lot of the messages I was seeing is that we have police officers who are now finally doing this, but they're not involving dispatch at all. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Luckily, my agency, we've been pretty ahead of the times, I guess. Even before like Uvalde and stuff happened, we had already started training with police and with fire who already had trained together previously for like active attack situations. So once they started including us, it was helpful for them to kind of see how we work too. But then after this incident, they've really gone through and looked at how we were training and the policies and stuff that even police and fire were doing, and they're starting to revamp it and have us train actually end scenarios and stuff with them.
Mallory, would you agree that if firefighters and police officers and other field units are training for these things and any kind of serious incident, and they're not including dispatch, would you agree with the assertion that it's really not good training at all because there's a critical component that's just left behind on that one?
Yeah, I mean, them working together on the scene, that's great and everything. What happens whenever you need us to do things and we don't know what you're wanting?
Case in point, you can't have an officer there pretending to be the dispatcher, because what if you go into a school and your radios aren't reaching dispatch now?
Right.
Drew, go ahead.
I lost my train of thought. How about managing the 10,000 mile stare? Just something for people to think about that are listening, no matter where you are in life, what your position is. So, she said it like she was a human being. She went over and she talked to everybody involved, and just think about how you never know how you're going to react to something like this until you're in the middle of it, or towards the end of it. And I've personally had to manage something as heavy as this, and it was pretty apparent that the people that were working the radio at the time needed to just go home. Like, they're of no use to us here. And in fact, just about every little thing was kind of invigorating, like triggering them, because every conversation we had about what they had just been through is something they assume is critical of them or whatever, and it just wasn't the case at all. So you have to remember that if you're minimally staffed and something like this happens, you're kind of in a sense screwed until you can get other people to come in there and at least have somebody standing behind the chair to tap on the shoulder and say, okay, I'm here, it's time for you to go. Because it's otherwise, I said this, if I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. If you don't have a well-adjusted person answering 911 calls or on the radio, it's going to be terrible for everybody around. The people on the radio set the tone for the cops on the street, believe it or not. I'm a firm believer in that, and I've done both jobs, so I understand that. But if somebody's not in their right frame of mind, then things can go terribly wrong. And what everybody else seems to forget is life goes on. So there are people with cats stuck in the tree, and there are people that obviously we're going to triage all those calls that come in, but at the same time, you got officers responding to domestic violence incidents and all the other dangerous stuff that normally goes on that you really have to be aware of and pay attention to, because we are a third, as dispatchers, I say we dispatchers are like the third set of ears or eyes. So you've got to make sure that they're like in the game, fully in the game. And the thing about the debrief, just a quick note about that, and I'm so glad that you guys got to participate in that. But the thing about the debrief is if you ever get to experience one, and I hope you don't, because it means that you were in a pretty bad traumatic situation. But if you ever get to experience one, I think my takeaway from the major incident that I had to run was, you just don't know how people are affected, and you don't know who is affected and why. So at the end of the whole thing, like, first of all, it was the first time communications was invited to a debrief. This was a major debrief. It was a major incident. And just like the emotions that came out, because they were called on first, just the recognition, everything else, like, we're progressing in the field, and were included, and all this other stuff. It was overwhelming to begin with, but they actually got out, stuff out of their system that they never knew that they had in there. And it opened a lot of eyes to the officers that were sitting in the room. The thing that stood out to me the most was at the end of it, the person, it was just a very bad call. It was a murder suicide that played out over the radio. And the person that seemed to be affected the most was sat in the back. She was from HR, and she was the one that signed off on the guy's packet. She's the one that signed off on it. So she's blaming herself for hiring this guy.
Oh man.
And you're not going to get that out of her when you know what I mean? Like, so traditionally in law enforcement or the fire services or whatever, that's the bitch secretary. That's you know what I mean? That's just like the grumpy old evidence guy that you think he's just drinking on the job or whatever. They're just so calloused because of something like that, and nobody ever asks them like, "Hey man, are you okay? Did this affect you in any way or whatever?" And I'm telling you, it was a river of emotion when she came out with what she came out with, and then she got the river of support, obviously, but all of us were just like stunned. Like, man, I never thought of that. I never would have thought of that. Please don't blame yourself for that. So just bear that in mind. And this is why I think it's unfair that we call it a debrief, or we have this big debrief, the critical incident stress debrief, and we don't include the people that were affected the most by it. So if you're out there listening, please include your communications people and any personnel that were affected, by the way. John, do you have anything?
Yeah, Mallory, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Leadership is kind of a core virtue around here. It's something that we really appreciate and that we talk about a lot. You mentioned, that you were checking on that brand new call taker dispatcher there, and you were checking on the other people that were there. If you're able to think of anything you'd like to share, like if you had to give advice for the next supervisor that's going to be put in your situation, what are some ways that they can take care of their people, and what are maybe some things they should avoid? I know for me, I'm one of these guys where I'm absolutely fine until someone asks me if I'm okay. And then when they check on me, like that's when I'm like, no, that's when I break down. What works for you as kind of that core supervisor? Because, you don't have a lot of, like you said, you're kind of at that next level, but you don't have all of the responsibility that shift supervisor has. So in a lot of ways, you're kind of a caretaker of your people. At least that's how it seems to me. If I'm right, let me know. And what do you do for them?
Luckily my shift, like while this happened, my shift, we had worked together for a while, so we kind of knew personalities and everything like that. That's the biggest thing as a leader that I've learned is get to know your people, because they may not say something's wrong, but just like you, if someone asks me if I'm okay, then I'm not going to be okay. But if you just let me do my job, I'm good until I have someone to relieve me, and then I'll process everything in my own way. And so that's why I'm lucky that we worked together, because I kind of knew everybody. So I kind of knew it affected them because it's a huge incident and it's not going to not affect somebody.
Right.
But they were doing okay with where they were at and what we did to help. And then the call taker, I kept checking in with her because I felt like I didn't know her that well, and I wanted her to know that it was okay if she wasn't okay, and just try and make sure that I kind of let her know situations that have happened with me, so that she kind of knew that we all have something traumatic happen to us, and if it bothers you, then speak up about it. And luckily my agency is very good with mental health, so they're big pushers of speak up if you're not okay, and not gonna judge you on it.
That's great to hear.
It's very hard to find in law enforcement. A lot of people, and this may be more common with field units, meaning primarily police officers, but they don't feel like they could admit they're anything less than their best because fellow officers are depending on them for their lives. There's a stigma attached to it. Of course, I've said it on the show before, that we're a society that mourns suicide, but we're sort of glib about getting mental health care. It is helpful to know your people. You and I were talking before the show about training. One aspect of the training that I try to cover, just because it is important, is how are you going to handle it if something bad happens today? Because when you're brand new, you don't get a grace period. You don't get 30 days or 90 days in which we promise no active shooters, we promise no murders on the radio or whatever. I try to address with them like, look, first of all, you need to know the county has an employee assistance program. That's something that you should use. you should also know that like one of the ways that I deal with stress around here is that I've kind of got a guy, like I've got a coworker that he was my partner. You know, he and I worked most shifts together for about the first 4 or 5 years that I was there. And we got a personal relationship, and he's just someone that I can talk to about anything. And so you let them know, I'm like, hey, I'm just your trainer. I know you just met. You can talk to me. If it's not going to be me, you need to find someone here who's just your person that you could talk to. Encourage building that kind of a relationship, and it's an informal thing, so it's hard to sort of band-aid that, like, hey, you have to make a friend here, particularly since a lot of people in our job don't like making friends at work just because the kind of environment that we can often be in. I know at our state academy too, when we go there, one of our homework assignments is when you leave for the weekend and you come back on Monday, you have to fill out who are 3 people that you can talk to that are your personal associates or friends about stuff, and then like you have to like find like counseling agencies in your area, so that when you face that, we almost treat it like it's inevitable that you have some kind of support system to go to. And it's difficult to have a job where you're basically saying, get ready for something terrible to happen to you. It can be very difficult to do.
We had a question in the chat about, why isn't there more interaction between school personnel and law enforcement? Because that's where, these things are apt to happen. And my response, I saw a response in the chat. Tanner responded, I think, pretty accurately. It's been my experience that the school people want to do what the school people want to do. And,
yeah.
and they're not necessarily, they're kind of like the cats in this situation. Law enforcement are kind of like dogs, and they know this is their realm and this is what they want to do. But, there's like an indifference of, what could you possibly tell me at times? Well, and administrators just, they're their own animal. And sometimes it's very necessary for them to just, they're responsible for the safety of all those children. But at the same time, you've got experts at your disposal. So maybe there should be more interaction, but it doesn't necessarily go that way. The school boards are kind of fickle when it comes to working with law enforcement.
They are. In fact, I've heard teachers and people in that profession say that, like the one time they had a call for service at a school, and it just happened to be that all the police officers were close by and together. And so they all just rolled up there because nothing else was going on. And the school was upset that, we had 3 police officers go out for this disorderly student. And the feedback I got on that was like, do you have any idea how humiliated they are and all the trauma that they've endured because 3 police officers responded? And I'm like, well, you sent out this call for disorderly conduct. It's like, we're just trying to take care of it. And really, the more officers we have, the more safe everyone is. Like, particularly if he's struggling, like a one-on-one struggle between a cop and a student, someone's going to get hurt. If you have 3 police officers, you could do that safely. So schools sometimes, like Drew said, they don't want to work with the cops. But overall, police don't go where they're not wanted. They need to be invited. And these school boards, they don't want to believe, just like the cops, they don't want to believe that anything could ever happen at their school. And in some ways, it's scary to say, you know what, we need to have that training here. We need to get really in depth with it. We need to do it quarterly, because they're admitting to themselves tacitly, like, hey, this is going to happen here, or this could happen here. And they're opening the door to what their worst fear is. I imagine that schools across the country in the last 10, 12 years, but especially lately, I mean, Christy, you worked in a school. I imagine you were very afraid of that. You were someone who would have to deal with that student in the classroom, and you're someone who wants that training. But, it's the political people, the bureaucracy, the school board, the administrator, principal, whoever's in charge, it's them who's not doing the inviting. It's up to them to invite, and they're not doing it.
Micah is on the line. If he would hold for just a minute or 2 more, we've got Will Cray, who has a question. Although he's saying, can you hear us both now, Will?
Hi. I can only hear you right now, Drew.
Okay.
Will, how are you?
All right. Well, Will, why don't you go ahead?
All right.
Yeah, go for it. Give us a question.
Hi, John. But my question for Mallory was, it's a little bit on lighter side. My question was, since I know it's a very stressful job, is there anything that you have that helps you de-stress from all the crap that you have to deal with at work?
I pretty much just try and find things in my off time, or if I know I'm really stressed, to try and decompress. So like I'll play rec softball or go out hanging with my friends and just we'll go play pool or something. I also do old lady crafts too, which kind of help me.
I love macrame personally. Very big into
I
that.
crochet, so
Very nice. You're actually not the only dispatcher I've ever met who does crochet. I think that might be a thing. Actually, I think I know 3 now that I've met
Yeah,
you.
a lot of
So,
them do it in the comm center.
yeah.
yeah, I do, but then I also do it like in my spare time too.
So Andrew kind of addressed this in the chat. He said, real talk though, you have to participate in your own rescue to survive. It's awesome that she's saying that, obviously, but you've got to speak up when it's time, and you've got to participate in the healing process. You can't just woe is me your way through it. And understandably, the profession lent to that for many, many years, because for the longest time it was, yeah, you've got no right to, you're not in immediate danger like the cops or the firefighters. Therefore, you don't have a right to be upset or whatever. But you have to understand that the trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter. The trauma is not any different when somebody has to deal with 400 people who are watching people be murdered and the guy that's out there actually taking him out. Believe it or not, that trauma is the exact same. The danger is a lot different. And that adds a whole different level of trauma to the guy that's out there. But the initial trauma, it's the exact same. Like, you're hearing gunshots over the phone. You're helpless. You can't get through the phone to help the people. You have people whispering, saying, I'm in a Whataburger and there's 20 of us hunkered down in a bathroom. Think of the dispatcher that took the call of the kid that was in the classroom in Uvalde. I mean, this is heavy, heavy, heavy stuff. And it's the only difference between like traditional first responders, what people call first responders, the people out in the field, and the dispatchers, is that there's acute danger involved there. But the trauma is the exact same, and it'll kill you just the same, as a dispatcher as it will as a first, as somebody that's out in the field. John, we have Micah ready. Do you have anything else before I go to him, or no?
Well, it'll kill you, but it also, the job will reject you, if you're not taking care of yourself, and if you're not, especially what you do, if you're not getting looked after, and if you don't have an agency that'll help you. We need 911 dispatchers. We need good people. We need people that don't get run off or don't get beaten down or defeated by incidents like these. If you're trying to have a career for a long time, you're going to have to face something like this, and you have to get through it, and it's not easy. Get Mike on the phone. I miss that guy.
Yeah, I miss Micah also, and it's a treat for Mallory because Micah is the captain of our own comm center. Captain Micah, are you there?
Hello, I'm here.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just listening to comm center smoking a stogie, so all is well.
What's your joke? Just get to the joke.
Well, I work in a different field, as you guys know. I am a supervisor, and I just wanted to say I've seen videos of this incident, listened to radio traffic, and I just want to tell Mallory I'm not familiar with all the technical details of your job. I don't do the job that all 3 of you do and have done, but I can see very little criticism of that event. I think everybody did a amazing job in light of what they dealt with, and I just want to thank all you guys for the service that you are doing and have done for your communities. If anybody did, Carly alluded to possibly getting written up for trying to do the right thing. I hope that wasn't the case in this instance, and if it was, I'm familiar with chaotic situations, and you just have to do the right thing, and if you have to take the right up, fuck them.
I'm with you.
Very brash way of putting it. I mean, particularly in a case like this where Mallory's trying to save lives. I mean, yeah, I heard, now if there's any question about how, other agencies got involved, or, the use of the personal cell phone, depending on how deeply you use it, like the way that I used it I'm not recommending that to anybody. Like, if that went to court or something, like now my cell phone is discoverable, everything that's on this part of that case, it's a bad thing. But what did I have? I had a guy with a gun to his head, and we need him to hear from his wife right now that he should put the gun down and come away from that situation. So, I'm never encouraging anyone to break policy. The policy is there to protect you from lawsuits. It protect you and your personal property from being discovered in some kind of lawsuit or criminal case even. But so often that, and Micah, you know this too, that we're put in impossible situations where we have to be human beings, and unfortunately we choose to take those risks sometimes for other people. And I don't know. I don't really want to editorialize about if it's the right thing to do to risk yourself or your property or your position at your job, but sometimes we just are in those situations because the policy doesn't cover everything. Drew.
Mallory, I want to turn the floor over to you. I mean, do you have any last thoughts, or do you have any suggestions, or what maybe could have been better, or do you have anything to kind of close it out with?
My biggest thing is I'm a huge proponent for training. I know we were talking earlier about how I'm kind of fed up with it right now, but my biggest thing is you train on something is how you're going to work it. So luckily we had the training, so we handled it pretty well, even though we were getting an influx of calls. But training is the biggest thing. You can't prepare enough for it.
John knows the Boy Scout motto is what? Be prepared. There's a fella named Andrew he was a prior guest on our show, and he wants you to talk about how much you miss him.
Oh, I don't.
Right.
I'm just still over here shimmering while he's in police academy.
Right. The stars. All right, good. Very good. I appreciate all of your insight. Mallory, John, do we have voicemails?
We could get to that. I want to say that, first of all, I miss Andrew. Even I miss him.
I miss Andrew, sure.
This is a good episode. That was a great episode too, and I have to wonder how his training is going, if he's putting to use any of the skills that I taught him.
He's killing it. I check on him every once in a while. He's killing it. He lost in a very heated and debated mustache. He's mustachioed, and he came in third place. He lost on a technicality, second place. And I told him it's just not acceptable in this profession to be second place. But he's recovering. We'll see what happens. But he came in third place in the mustache contest. So
is he recovering from eating that Christmas ornament? That was a gentleman's bet, and I expected him to follow through with that. So Mallory, he failed several police questions, and maybe you saw that. He was forced to against as well. Okay, I'll play some voicemails. Oop, hold on. Let me get it keyed up there, Drew. Hold on one second. Keep talking. Do some flapjack stuff. Do you want me to do my killer ad read?
I don't know.
So things are a little bit different around here. We've got different ads to read. So this is a perfect opportunity now while I'm trying to do two things at once. Downloading a file from my Google Drive, but I guess I wanted to talk about Stan's Furniture Liquidators of Ankeny, Iowa. If you are looking for used hotel furniture to furnish your dilapidated house, or if you know someone who's going to the University of Iowa, you can go down to Stan's Furniture Liquidators, and you could go down there and get a great deal. They don't have a website, so you will just have to tell them that the Comm Center with Drew Breezy is the ones who sent you. I'm only getting like Jim from Florida voicemails. Let me see here what I've got.
Actually, don't use the words promo code in their presence, because it's a trigger for them.
If you say promo code, they're not even going to understand that. They don't have
it's a trigger for them, and they are heavy into wicker. And by the way, that so you'll know, that's Randy the Cop's. That's where he got all of his furniture.
What was our last episode? Was it the 16th? Because I have it in here by date, so I think I've got the right one now.
I could not.
You would have no way of knowing. There's no way to remember anything.
Yeah, because we skipped. We skipped for Thanksgiving.
Anyway, if you're okay with having some filthy furniture, just go down there and use that. All right, I found the correct file. I just need to hook it up to the system now. I'm so embarrassed. I'm doing this on the fly. This is totally worth it though, because we have let these voicemails sit for a whole week, and we definitely need to get them played. one more time, Stan's delicious, wonderful discount furniture.
Crispy
I
furniture.
so want to
right?
play these though. So hold on, please bear with me. All right, I think I've got it all ready to go. Okay, so we've got Brittany here.
I'm leaving a voicemail for John because he wanted me to call in, and I was like, no, I don't want to call in the game show. But anyway, next time you ask me to call, I'm gonna record beats just for you, John, because that's how I show my love. Okay, and that's how I show that I care and my affection. Just feel bad for my poor husband, but I digress. You guys did great, and I hope to see more game shows because they're so much fun. Anyway, good night, guys.
Thank you for that rambling, incoherent thanks to us. That was totally not worth me like making up a furniture ad read for that. I have one more to play though. This one also may not be worth it, but hey, we're playing the voicemails. We technically have to do them. Also, I'm using my personal cell phone and I'm overcoming difficulties in the heat of the moment. So this is all just a meta, commentary on what my job is like as a 911 dispatcher.
Sure.
Let's play the last one. This one will definitely be worth it, I'm sure.
Добрый день, comrades. It's Sergey from Northern Russia. John, you still haven't called us back about your car's extended warranty. So we'd like to tell you a joke to help we get you to call back. 10 plus 10 equals 11 plus 11.
I'm going to tell you that joke didn't translate, Sergey. I don't know what 10 plus 10 equals 11 plus 11. I guess I'll come down and take care of my car's extended warranty just so that we can stop future voicemails.
I think if you write that out in Cyrillic, it's actually pretty funny. But I don't know. Yeah, I would have to use Google Translate for that one.
Anyone irritated in the last few minutes can please send complaints to drew.breezy@gmail.com. He's the person.
It's one more, Drew Breezy. Please send me an email. I'm lonely at times.
Drew,
okay.
Where can they find us though?
All right. Well, I'm glad that you said that. Mallory, if you'll stick around for 1 second, I want to take care of a little business here. And then we want to give you a round of applause. You can find us on YouTube at it's www.youtube.com/the Comm Center, at the Comm Center, I think it is. The best place to find us, we've got quite a following on a Facebook group known as the Comm Center. However, we started a Facebook page known as the Comm Center. And it just makes it easier for cross posting and stuff like that. So if you go to @the_comm_center on Instagram, you'll find very similar stuff that is on the Facebook page, the Comm Center.
Make sure you do all three so that you're constantly getting notifications about the exact same thing that we post. You get 3 notifications. So go do all 3.
You can literally see my frustration as sometimes they post to all 3, sometimes one post to the other 2. So you can just judge by the post whether I'm balled up in tears. Okay, and then so we have our own YouTube channel, and then if you go to Apple or Spotify, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and you search the Comm Center, you'll see the very famed blue and yellow logo of myself, a very buff looking caricature of me, and then John smoking some type of it's in the upper right hand corner if you're watching. That's our podcast. So if you want to download it as a podcast, that's great. I mean, Spotify, let me heart on my sleeve here. We have jumped so far in the last month. I am just so pleased at everybody's response. I'm pleased at how the word is spreading to the dispatcher community, because that's what I'm looking for. And it's not just for dispatchers. It's for cops. It's for firefighter paramedics. It's for your Aunt Sally. It's for civilians that just want a peek behind the curtain of what goes on. Where else are you going to get Mallory explaining to you what happens in a communication center?
She's about to find out this was an exclusive deal that she's never allowed to appear anyone else.
She's going to get right. She has signed all of our non-disclosures. And
we don't do contracts around here, Drew.
this really does. It's on the spreadsheet. This really does go a long way when you spread it word of mouth. That's all we're looking for. I mean, give us a little love. We love you, and we're not really asking for money yet. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? We do have that sponsor, the furniture place in.
That reminds me. By the way, the first 46 original episodes of Comm Center, I did go ahead and I wrote those to some blank VHS tapes that I still had. So you could buy the whole first season on VHS. You could do that today.
Yes, they were in SLP, not EP. What I'm doing right now is slowly rolling out all of our old episodes. I'm editing them up and just kind of announcing what they are and kind of editing some of the stuff out because, of course, we had a lot of technical difficulties at the beginning. So
only
if there's
then, no, not now.
If there's not now. If there's an episode that you're looking for in particular, please just let me know and I'll get it.
I'll record it on the VCR. We'll get it sent out to you, certified mail. Not a problem.
We certainly have the goal of January. It's a new year. It's a new us. So stick with us all through I plan on, we're probably we may change up the day we're doing things. We may change up whether we do it live or not. We'll still be in the chats live, but we may maybe just do it live once a month. We're kicking a lot of things around and we're always open to suggestions because you are the people we serve. So that's, whatever the people we serve want, that's probably what we're going to consider,
especially
before John
for
makes
money,
the ultimate decision.
If you do want to pay us something, now that Stan is our only sponsor, like if you do just want to write us checks, that would be good. Share the show, follow, give us a 5-star rating and review. That propels us up in the charts. We do want to succeed. We're on our own. We're starting from scratch. If you want more Comm Center, if you don't want me to be doing this for free in the style of, say, slavery, then go ahead and make sure you share it. Help us grow, help us get sponsors, let us keep going. We appreciate everyone's help. We know that this is a grassroots thing. We know that we have people here who are here just because they love us. For example, Christy in the chats is my biological sister, and if she didn't show up and ask some questions, I was going to be furious at her. So that is how
she's a shrimpy wimp.
She is. All right, Mallory, stick around now for the show.
John, you stick around as well.
Drew, you stick around.
Hey, listen, if any of you know of a sponsor that wants to get in front of a couple thousand people every episode, every week, tell them to hit me up.
Yeah, we're a show. We take advertisers. All right. On behalf of everyone here, we're sorry for 7 out of the last 10 minutes. All right, we will talk to you later. Adios and goodbye.
1,000 episodes.